Oh, conta. Let's fool around with some famous buildings. Today we're talking about the Centre Pompidou, a building that answered the question, what if we build a museum but forgot to finish it? Or at least that's what many Parisians thought when it opened in 1977. Today it's one of the most famous buildings in the world and a masterpiece of high-tech architecture. But when people first saw it, reactions ranged from confusion to outright horror.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
The Centre Pompidou is located in Paris and was designed by Richard Rogers and Renzo. The project was commissioned by French President Georges Pompidou, who wanted to create a new cultural center for the city. Unfortunately, he died before seeing it completed in 1977. The name Centre Pompidou sounds very elegant, yet the building itself looks like a refinery that discovered modern art. But to understand why it exists, we have to go back to the 1960s. At the time, Paris was changing. The old food market of Les Halles, hopefully I said this correctly, were being relocated, leaving behind a huge piece of valuable urban land. City planners thought this would be the perfect opportunity to reinforce Paris as a global center for art and culture. The city also had another problem. It didn't actually have a large free public library, which sounds strange today, but at the time it was considered a major gap. Initially, there was a lot of debate over what should happen to the old market district. Eventually, it was announced that this area would become the future site of a new public library. Then in 1969, the newly elected president Georges Pompidou looked at the project and essentially said, "You know what the library needs? An entire museum for contemporary art." And while they were at it, they also decided to include IRCAM, a research center dedicated to music and acoustics. Because if you're building one cultural institution, you might as well build three. An international design competition was organized, which is unusual because France traditionally favored French architects. But this time, international teams were allowed to participate. A total of 681 proposals were submitted. The jury included architectural giants like Oscar Niemeyer, Jean Prouvé, and Philip Johnson. And somehow, they selected two relatively unknown architects in their 30s, Richard Rogers and Renzo.
In the business, we call this foreshadowing.
The story gets even better. Rogers and Piano were convinced they had absolutely no chance of winning. So instead of playing it safe, they designed something completely insane. Their proposal turned the building inside out. Normally, architects hide the ugly stuff. The pipes go inside walls, the ventilation disappears into ceilings, electrical systems stay hidden, stairs and escalators are tucked neatly away. The Centre Pompidou does the exact opposite. Everything is on the outside. The structural frame, the ventilation ducts, the plumbing, the circulation, the escalators. It's basically a building that arrived without its skin. And to make sure nobody got confused, everything was color-coded. Green pipes carry plumbing and doo-doo. Blue ducts handle climate control. Yellow contains electrical systems. Red marks circulation and safety elements like elevators, escalators, and fire equipment. It's essentially architectural color by numbers, or a giant educational toy, if you may. Renzo later explained that the idea was never to create a monument that intimidated people. His goal was to make a museum that inspired curiosity, a place where everyone could come, rich or poor, young or old. For people who loved art and people who accidentally walked in because they were looking for a bathroom. Piano even described it as not really being a building at all. He wanted it to feel like a city, a place where you could find lunch, books, art, music, and public life all mixed together. And from a functional standpoint, putting everything outside had a practical benefit. The interior floors became enormous open spaces without structural interruptions. Instead of designing galleries for one generation, they created giant flexible platforms that could be rearranged as exhibitions changed, which is surprisingly sensible for a building that looks like it escaped from an industrial accident. The Centre Pompidou houses three major institutions. BPI, one of the largest public libraries in France. It contains around 367k books, specialist journals, audiovisual archives, photographs, and countless other materials. Unlike many libraries, it's not a lending library. You don't borrow the books borrow your free time. The BPI also hosts exhibitions, cultural events, and documentary screenings. The second institution is the largest museum for modern and contemporary art in Europe. The third institution is IRCAM, the Institute for Research and Coordination in Acoustic and Music. It focuses on experimental music and sound research, because the building apparently wanted to be a library, museum, university, laboratory, and social experiment simultaneously. The entire complex sits behind a huge public plaza called Place Georges Pompidou. This open space has become almost as famous as the building itself. Street performers, musicians, artists, tourists, and people simply sitting around all used the square, which was exactly the intention. The building wasn't designed to separate culture from everyday life. It was designed to throw them together and see what happens. The public, however, needed some time to process this. Many people hated it in the beginning. The exposed pipes, the industrial appearance, the fact that it looked like someone had built the mechanical room first and forgot to add the architecture. They compared it to the Eiffel Tower. Parisians hated that too when it was built. Apparently, Paris has a long tradition of eventually loving buildings it initially wanted to destroy. Basically, love at second sight. And over time, the Centre Pompidou completely changed the architectural conversation. When Richard Rogers won the Pritzker Prize in 2007, the New York Times wrote that the Pompidou Center had turned the architectural world upside down. The Pritzker jury praised it for revolutionizing museums, transforming what had once been elite cultural monuments into lively places of public exchange woven into the fabric of the city. In other words, they made museums less intimidating. You didn't have to climb giant marble staircases while feeling underdressed. You can simply walk into what looked like the world's most expensive construction site and enjoy a pleasant afternoon. Ironically, the building that exposed all of its technical system eventually developed a lot of technical problems. Asbestos had to be addressed, mechanical systems aged, accessibility standards evolved, energy efficiency requirement changed. After almost 50 years of use, the building itself needed a major renovations. Preparations began in 2025. Parts of the collection became inaccessible. The BPI was temporarily relocated. And on September 22, 2025, the Centre Pompidou officially announced its full closure for a modernization project expected to last until 2030. The goal isn't to reinvent the building, it's to preserve it. The renovation focuses on removing asbestos, upgrading technical infrastructure, improving accessibility, and making the building more energy efficient while respecting its architectural identity. The building that spent its whole life proudly showing everyone how it works now has to undergo a complete service inspection.
This piece of shit.
Even architectural icons eventually need maintenance, and maybe that's the biggest lesson of the Centre Pompidou. Good architecture doesn't always look beautiful at first. Sometimes it looks ridiculous. Sometimes it's called a monster. Sometimes half the city wonders if the contractors forgot to finish the job. And then, a few decades later, architecture students are writing essays about how revolutionary it was while pretending they would have supported it from the beginning. Anyway, I hope I gave you guys an appreciation for the building that looks like it escaped from an industrial accident, and thank you for watching. Till next time.